Hey everybody, it's a pleasure being with everybody tonight. Um, and thank you so much for tuning into my presentation. So today I'm going to be talking about my idea and proposal for a project, which was the Department and Committee on Physician Wellness Research and Initiatives. All right, so um, just to kind of get started here, this is one of the most significant yet underappreciated problems that's kind of currently plaguing the healthcare industry is that physicians are leaving the bedside at incredibly alarming rates, right? And burnout from the context of a healthcare perspective is definitely this like multifaceted concept, but we can say that it's defined as, feelings of exhaustion or cynicism and, perceived inefficacy that kind of is a result of long-term job stress and usually results from the consequences of severe or prolonged stress and anxiety for people working in the healing professions, right? So, as a result of a report that was conducted in 2017 that surveyed over 20,000 physicians, it was reported that there was a nationwide burnout rate of about 51%, right? Which, all in all, is like a 25% increase from the last time it was taken in 2013. So over a 4-year period, and that's astronomical growth. It's kind of can be unsubstantiated in many ways, and one of the main factors that are driving, these burnouts among clinicians, especially physicians, are inefficient work processes and environments, right? So, extensive computerized documentation that detracts time away from patient care and increases the time spent on tasks, that clinicians feel passionate about, right? So this additional time spent documenting, entering orders into an EMR is also time in which clinicians aren't usually paid for their services, right? So on top of that, you have excessive workloads, long hours, and really a loss of support from colleagues, and this deterioration of autonomy in their work schedule and method of providing care to patients. Clinician payment models are causing a lot of issues nowadays because they're feeling like they're not being reimbursed for the work that they're performing. And there's a lot of interorganizational climate factors, right? So interprofessional collaboration, opportunities for advancement, and social support, right? So those are some of like the main factors that are driving this physician burnout. And just from a general perspective, one of the big effects of clinician burnout on really this holistic functioning of the healthcare system extend far beyond what you might see as like operational downsides or of inevitable, turnover, right? So one of the most detrimental side effects of clinician burnout is kind of the degradation of the quality of patient care, along with an increase in medical errors, right? So studies that measure the emotional exhaustion levels of physicians also show a positive correlation between emotional exhaustion and patient mortality, right? So, even further, right, depersonalization of patients by clinicians also relate to longer recovery times for patients. And similarly, clinician burnout has a disproportionately high correlation um, with the degree of satisfaction by patients following their hospital stay, right? So if you have patients who, um, are going to report that they have a greater, experience in the hospital for a multitude of different reasons, whether it be the care they were provided or in combination, the care provided and kind of the relationship that they build with the clinical team and the trust that they have for them, it's ultimately going to enhance the health system's reputation and reputability. So they might stay within the, let's say, for example, Mass General Brigham system instead of staying in the Beth Israel Lahey system, right? And there's correlations for all that. Um, so, but a greater level of reported symptoms of burnout by clinicians really has this inverse relationship in which patients feel that they're cared for. They report disappointment with the quality of care that they receive, right? So data further shows that a patient's perception of their care has a vital impact on their perceived outcome related to an illness or injury, right? So that's kind of, a perspective that we just touched on and just a little bit more information about it. But from an insurance reimbursement perspective, right, like we said, negative reporting of a patient's experience in post-hospital discharge survey results in penalties and impacts the amount of reimbursable money from CMS that the hospital is eligible to receive, right? So, I know that that was a lot of information, but if you look at the slide, right, in general, what you get from burnout are this triad of depersonalization, emotional exhaustion, and a sense of reduced personal accomplishment, which then results in kind of this other triad. And I'm really sorry about my photo on the screen that's not allowing you to see it, but I'll post slides individually after. But you have this disruption in the ability of a physician to work effectively in a team environment. You have a decrease in physician work performance, which leads to increased patient errors, and then has this kind of snowball effect operationally with the amount of money that they get from the hospital. Patients not wanting to stay in that system, and it really the deterioration to their respective quality of life, which affects every aspect of their profession as a healer and a clinician, right? Um, and then another incredibly important, component of my uh, my research that I did on physician burnout are the financial implications that are due to physician burnout, right? So right off the bat, there's this national average of 13% turnover every 2 years of attending faculty at university medical centers, and to me that was astounding, right? Because it's just like every 2 years, the relationships that physicians build and how they become more kind of ingrained into a system and how it functions and how they work with the clinical staff pretty much gets thrown out the window or kiboshed, right? And then you have to kind of start over. And no matter how seasoned the clinician is, the system in which they function is imperative to their ability to be a good clinician, right? So from a financial perspective, it's really difficult to have that kind of accurate gauge of the full financial loss. And this is due to the fact that a tremendous proportion of the potential loss is tied to indirect costs, right? So for example, I know this is kind of cut off a little bit, but on the bottom right-hand corner, explains that a lot of the losses are indirect losses that result from malpractice lawsuits, from patient errors, from patients completely abandoning a respective health system, a payer deciding to therefore end contractual negotiations with a provider or service, and obviously there's eventual reductions in annual reimbursement rates, which are inevitable if the department is seeing less patients from the onset, right? So then outside of the estimation of these other factors, there are a lot, the direct costs just directly uh, from turnover are the fact that there's national averages between 15 and $30 million in which physician recruitment, that's what the hospital usually has to allocate to recruit the right physicians, right? So that's an incredible amount of money. And then if you look at the total annual amount that's really attributable to physician burnout at the national level, it's between 2.6 and 6.3 billion, right? So um, the financial implications for physician burnout are incredible, which is why there needs to be some sort of action that's taken to prevent and strategize a way for it, really to be, in a sense, rejuvenated with solutions. The next slide talks a little bit about the budget, which I don't want to spend too much on this slide, but basically, if you see for the department, what I had theorized was, and you guys can take a look at the mathematics and some of the breakdown there that I did, but in essence, the amount of money that the department is going to actually spend doesn't even come close to the amount of money that it can lose, right? So um, it's incredible to see when you're actually playing around with figures and just looking at relative calculations and costs that, the department, spending potentially $2 or $3 million, but then having to potentially lose 10 or 15 just on physician recruitment costs is incredible. And it also doesn't look at the potential return on investment that can come from uh, the impacts or improvements in patient care, the improvements in operational efficiency, or the improvements in, um, you know, just diagnostically related results in patient care, right? So I'm solely looking at it from the data that we saw in the last slide, right? $15 million that a hospital spends, or a big health system or university medical center spends on physician recruitment, just on physician recruitment, not even looking at all the other potential losses. And I'm solely asking for, somewhere in the potential $2.5 million range when we look at when eventually I would think that all the calculations are integrated, right? So um, again, this I'm not going to spend too much time on here, but you guys can look at my breakdowns and see if it kind of makes sense. So this next slide, is an important one because we start to talk about the actual committee, right? And the committee as it works in conjunction with the Office of Physician Wellness and Department of Physician Wellness and Research, right? So um, the mission is to support the programs, initiatives, and research of the Departmental Office of Physician Wellness through these strategic meetings and partnerships that are structured around providing real-time field data for the purposes of providing feedback to critically appraise the efficacy of department's theorized work. So the general structure of my proposal and the office is such that it's going to operate in conjunction with the various chiefs of the different departments within the hospital to address physician burnout within their subjective departments. Okay, there are general factors that universally contribute to physician burnout, which they're but the majority of them are uniquely and undoubtedly subjective and need to be analyzed in a sense that occurring at the departmental level. And department chiefs and the office and the structure, as you'll see, need to work together to address those problems, right? So from the original outset and instantiation of the department, the hospital is going to advertise the services of the department. If an individual chief of the department, administrative manager, director, HR personnel contacts the office to consult with a specific department, then the engagement will ensue from this standpoint. However, our wellness officers, in and of themselves, outside of outreach to the office, will conduct individual research and program creation for general physician wellness, and it will be the discretion of department chiefs to facilitate an implementation of a program with their department. However, utilizing a committee structure is imperative to ensuring that there is this institutionalized collaboration and coordination of conjoined programs between our office and the respective departments that utilize our services in the hospital. So outside of the department chiefs working, with the individual wellness officers and coordinating their own respective communication collaboration, the chiefs in our department will be obligated really to attend these bi-weekly meetings that are structured around thought leadership and collaboration, and to also kind of update each other on the progress being made with individual projects. Okay. So the structure of the committee follows the structure of the department. And it's fairly simple. So the department is going to be spearheaded by a chief wellness officer that should be academically trained in research methods and should also have experience with providing wellness initiatives to healthcare staff. Usually the department not usually, the department also has other wellness officers that are trained in organizational development, industrial and organizational psychology, and should really have this fervor, I would say, for developing programs and initiatives for employee wellness. Right, so we're really looking for specialized personnel that have studied the inner working of systems, efficiency, kind of organizational engineering, process reorientation. So the department should, we're going to employ project and program managers and coordinators that work in conjunction with wellness officers to develop those programs that are aimed at solutions pertinent to specific departmental dynamics, right? So theorized operational approach for this office is it's going to combine ongoing research, like I said, in the field of organizational engineering, industrial and organizational psychology, physician behaviors, and will tailor their research findings and solutions to departmental problems that they identify after these strategic partnerships with the different departmental chiefs. So the chief wellness officer is essentially at the helm, right? Works on allocation of budgets, and also with the department chiefs and project coordinators working in unison. The most important relationship for the growth of an initiative or program in the department is this triad, where you have a wellness officer, the project coordinator, and the department chief. The project coordinators are definitely going to be assisting the wellness officers, of course, with their research and programs, but they also have to serve a key role as a liaison within the department with the department chief to provide feedback on the development of programs, right? So it is this triangular working relationship that's going to dictate the efficacy of program development and application at the individual departmental level, right? So the department, as you can see, is very much so one that's interdisciplinary in nature, and collaborations are built within the department. So there could be various evolutions in which the department could address other components of burnout that become pertinent as time goes on. Okay, one of the things that are important, I think, in project management or any kind of development is the key performance indicators that you have, right? So the objective of the committee and the department in general is really driven by the ability of the department to garner insight into the inner workings of physician well-being within the department and the hospital, right? So while we can certainly say that there are general metrics that we look at of KPIs, such as, optimizing EMR usage and clinical workflows so that providers don't spend all this time on facilitating care through surgical order entry, medication management, note development, and other workflows. We need to generate feedback from departments on the general well-being of their physicians, right? So it's going to be the responsibility of the department chiefs and how they communicate with their staff, along with the key triangular relationship that we talked about between the wellness officer, project coordinator, and the chief, to ensure that we can tailor these general KPIs to KPIs that are departmentally and problem specific, so that we can create programs to address the well-being needs. So from a general perspective, if physicians, for example, we're looking at general metrics, if they're answering the surveys that are indicating that there is a lack of support, or the data generation is proving that there's a high degree of burnout, based on the skilled questionnaires, or there's a high turnover that's evident, then the department can definitely develop these general solutions to these issues. However, ultimately, it's going to be the job of the wellness officers in triangular relationship for the programs to be generated, refined, and tailored to the specific departments. Okay. So committee procedures, on this slide. So the general procedure of the committee and the structure of the department is that, the triangular relationship has to work together to develop general ideas for research. And if they're at the stage in which they're working with the department chief, then this will formally be proposed using some form of a template for idea proposal. And ultimately, you have your proposal and decision making, you have the meetings that occur weekly, and then you have conflicts and resolutions, of course, that can always ensue. And it would really be the job of the chief wellness officer to, obviously when there's conflict issues, that's a whole other topic and a whole other concept, but the chief wellness officer essentially will have to work with project coordinators, department chiefs, and the other wellness officers to kind of come up with a plan that would work best to problem solve those issues and create a performance improvement plan that everybody can, at least to some degree, tentatively agree on, right? So, this kind of talks a little bit about the process in general for the instantiation of a program or project and how it would move forward, right? So, as we said, there's a formal proposal using a template, and the chief wellness officer will meet with the parties involved and then approve, deny, or adjudicate with recommendations for eventual proposal. And then after a program and its budget is approved, the committee will meet to monitor the progress of the initiatives and goals. So, kind of as we had previously stated, the department chief, wellness officer, and project coordinator will structure their own meetings to ensure the success of individual programs that they develop. But these biweekly check-ins, I think, are really important because they allow for a formal level of accountability across the departments. And while there might not be enough time in a meeting for a full-scale breakdown of each project, I think that the touch base is important and can serve really worthwhile to ensure that each project is proceeding according to some sort of a timeline. So the other department chiefs that are in the meeting are looking and are hearing and looking at the projects, and they're like, well, this is kind of not making progress. This is what happened last week, and it just creates this accountability and an expectation that progress is going to be made, and holds people accountable, right? So obviously there's going to be a quarterly and an annual review with the subsequent metrics, and to look at these projects in full scale, right? Is a project actually moving? Is it developing? What have been the barriers to success? Is it sufficient enough? Are those barriers sufficient enough? And the subsequent solutions that have been conjured up, are they sufficient enough for us to say, okay, the project's going to continue to receive funding, it's working, or we're going to abandon it, right? And there's so many different things that can happen, but I think these biweekly committee meetings are important from a structure perspective. Okay. Obviously, the lifespan of the committee will never disband, because it's necessary to the ongoing success of the office, the programs, because one of the pillars of the program is the ongoing need for thought leadership and collaboration, right? So the structure of the committee may be altered at some points, kind of depending on the process as it's instantiated by the chief wellness officer, but it might be that an aspect of the committee meeting schedule doesn't work. So the CWO is going to provide these survey-oriented, solutions and feedbacks in which project coordinators and wellness officers can speak about their opinion on the committee structure and processes. But ultimately, the committee is needed. It's needed so that, like I said, thought leadership and process improvement and accountability can definitely continue to be a pillar of the ongoing success of the department and the programs. Okay. So, and kind of wrapping up here, this is the program in general, functions on these three pillars of support, collaboration, and refinement of processes to reach our intended goals, right? The facilitating a supportive environment in which meetings foster idea generation and support for initiatives and research and projects is imperative to the success of the department and the programs that we create. And kind of as we've spoken about throughout the presentation, we want to promote this cross-departmental team collaboration so that there's interdisciplinary support and thinking for various programs, right? So diversity of thought is incredibly important in physician burnout, given that it's really an academic area that is in the nascent stages of development. So any data and information that we can strategically conjure up and have meaning to is important, and that takes many different parties and many different thinkers, right? So the supportive collaboration, intellectual curiosity from all those involved will ultimately lead to innovation and the refinement of processes. All right, so I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I look forward to listening to all of yours, and please provide any feedback or questions. I'm always open to collaborating or building on these in any capacity that any of you might see fit for a project or research or whatnot. Okay, thank you so much. It's been an awesome semester, and take care. Bye-bye.